welcome everyone to the session. My name is Chioke I'Anson. I'm a professor of African American Studies here at VCU in Richmond, Virginia. I am the voice of underwriting for the NPR podcasts and digital downloads and newscasts and stuff. And I also run this thing called the VPM ICA Community Media Center, which is much like WAVS, just a free thing that does podcasting education. And we've been running for almost a year now, and we are opening a physical space in the fall. You're all invited. It's down here in Richmond, Virginia at the ICA, and it's going to look like this. In other words, it's going to look like the coolest studio that you've ever seen in your life. I cannot wait. All right. I suppose that we're here today to talk about finding a voice or developing one's voice in podcasting. This is a strange concept, and I was excited to say yes to this because I think that it's something that we all need, but not necessarily something that we think about in a way that is operationalized. So I've been reflecting on it for a couple weeks now, and I think I have like basically 7 steps I want to share with you with regard to developing one's voice. And then I would like to have a further discussion about it, because I think that in making this talk, I probably made some assumptions about things that you may not share, and so I would love to discuss that and figure things out. So let me begin first off with a statement about myself. Now, I work for NPR, and what that means on some level is that I have learned to speak in an NPR-like fashion. Right. So, and because of this, I often have to fight myself when it's time for me to speak in some other fashion. Right. Because arguably, the thing that I do the most is read funding credits, and like the most, like a couple hours a day, every day, I read funding credits. So like being NPR-y comes much easier to me than other modes of expression. So this was especially good for me to think about, because I have to think about the fact that I actually have multiple voices. I have the professor voice, I have the NPR voice, I have, my Chioke downtime voice, which is increasingly used increasingly less as the pandemic goes on. But all of these things they've got features, right? And I think that what we're here to talk about today is how to maximize the power of whatever our, like, let's say, podcast or audio voice is. Okay, so here are my assumptions about you. I think that I'm talking to an audience that is on the beginner spectrum of developing their podcast voice, or maybe you've been doing it for a minute, but maybe just haven't thought about it, and you're here to do some thinking alongside other like-minded people. So that's my basic assumption. Okay. And so what I have for you today are like 7 steps to developing your voice, and these steps are not in order. And at the beginning, we'll begin with a discussion about what exactly a voice is. Now, I think that whenever we say, "Oh, this person has a voice," we're not simply saying that this person has the ability to speak, but we're saying that this person that we're making normative claims about the qualities that we hear when they speak. And based off of this, I think that a voice is 2 things. One is it's a quality of vocal projection. 2 is it is a reliable perspective. And 3 is that it is a kind of sustained energy. So if I, oh, and side note, it's all of these things as they exist for an audience. I don't think that we can talk about there being voices without there being audiences, right? Like there's no, you can't have a voice without an audience. So it's all of these things as they exist for an audience. And this is a crucial connective thing, because I think that the most well-developed voices in the universe are not going to be able to withstand a fundamental change in audience, right? Because suddenly the thing that you've developed will fall flat, and you'll have to redevelop for the sake of whatever that crowd is, right? Okay. Okay. So that's my starting point, and I hasten to add that if you think differently, I would like to hear it, because this is a conversation that is geared toward all of our mutual development. And it's not a conversation that's geared toward, you know, the wise old sage Chioke telling you how to do stuff. You see what I'm saying? So like this is more about the opening reflections that allow us to reach better truths. Okay. Step 1. Recognize that the way you speak in regular company need not be the way you speak on the mic. I say this because I think that people get trapped by the concept of authenticity. So people will say things like, oh, well, I was trying to do this, but it didn't sound, it didn't sound like me, or it's not the way that I normally, talk. So it didn't seem, authentic or whatever. And to that, I say authenticity is a highly problematic concept and really only ever does people harm. I think that we have to accept that when we are getting in front of a mic or getting in front of a crowd or whatever it is, that we are, as Judith Butler said, being performative. And that performativity is a part of everything that we do. And that furthermore, this performativity changes depending on the context. So it's okay if you behave in, or speak in a certain kind of way with your family and friends, and you speak in a fundamentally different kind of way when you get on the microphone. I think that that's okay. Now, I will note that over time, you may find that these ways of speaking move together or like undulate with regard to their distance from one another. And I think that that's okay. I think that's a totally okay thing to do. Now, I think that once we accept this, we're just basically freed from the pressure to have any kind of harmony with the way that we present on a microphone with, how we present elsewhere in the world. Like separate those things and just develop in your directions. And it might turn out to be the case that the way that you express yourself in private or whatever is similar to how you do it on the mic, but it doesn't, crucially, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. Okay. Okay. So then the second thing is be Micable. Be Micable. Now, this I'm saying is the lowest bar like for entry, I think, because if we're talking about having a voice in a podcasty context, we can't escape the notion that we have to interact with technology in a certain kind of way. So that means that you have to speak with the right amplitude and clarity. Now, I'm a professor person. Whenever I'm in class, back when you actually went to class, I would get excited and speak very fast, like stepping over all of my words. I would turn away from the students, and then they would hear me not speaking directly to them, but like speaking to the board. I might look down at my book and like talk into my book a little bit. And all of this is par for the course in a classroom. This, in fact, is what we might expect in a classroom. There are these different ways of doing things. But this wouldn't work at all if the point is to speak into a microphone. Y'all see what I'm saying? So we have to know that we are interacting with technology, and we need to interact optimally with technology. This means a few things. It means that if you're the kind of person who's used to, like, this is the way that you're used to talking and stuff, you're probably going to have to like talk differently than this, because I don't think that a lot of people are going to want to hear this and also stay awake. You know what I'm saying, guys? Hey, what if I did the whole rest of this talk like in this voice right here? How would that work for y'all? Would that be cool? Okay, so does that make sense? But of course, this might be the way that you interact like in your regular life, like which would totally be fine, right? It would totally be fine. But when we're getting on a mic, this is presupposing the existence of an audience, and we have to ask the question, does our audience want to hear us speak in such a fashion? Probably not. Does our audience want to hear us blow out the scene with plosives or whatever? Probably not. Does our audience want to hear a bunch of like room noise because we spoke so softly we had to raise the volume, and then that raised the volume of the background? Probably not. So this is all it's all like, it's half technical stuff and half speaking with a sufficient amplitude to like overcome the signal to noise ratio, to have the right relationship with the signal to noise ratio on the microphone. I say all of that to say that you might need to think about what kind of microphone you have. Maybe you're a dynamic mic type person and you've been messing around with these condensers this whole time, but that's not really how you need to roll. Maybe you have a high voice or a bright voice, and you need to make sure that your mic is receptive to that. It's okay for these to be the kinds of reflections that you have. Most of the people that I know have a microphone that they prefer, have a microphone that they will even take with them because it ensures the kind of sound that they're going to get out of themselves, and that becomes a part of what we expect whenever we hear them. And as a matter of fact, it can sometimes be quite jarring when we say, here's someone that we're used to on another show, and they've showed up in that other studio and they're talking into that other mic and they sound a bit different, and we're like, what's going on here? Well, it's because at on your show, that's where we expect your voice to be the strongest, and that's going to include how you interact with uh, with the microphone, right? So speaking loudly, speaking with clarity, and having the tech that is doing your voice the most favors. This is what I mean by be Micable, and this is like for me the absolute starting point to developing a voice of any kind. Okay. Now, let us suppose that we've got our mic, we've got like a nice environment to record in. We're all set up, and however, we still have to figure out how we're going to communicate on the microphone in such a way that people are going to you know feel it, that they're going to get into it. And speaking for myself, I know that I always had issues expressing the emotional content, right? Of like expressing having emotional content whenever I was on the mic saying stuff. I would sound a little bit too much like even Professor Chioke or even Robot Chioke. And people on the radio, people don't love that too much. So this is a thing that I had to work on, especially in the context of like NPR, where the copy that they gave me was, some would say, a little like rigid and a little not exciting and a little not full of any emotional anything that you can connect to, and that kind of thing. Because it's like, it's ad copy. All right. So here's an exercise that you can do to help unlock your potential performativity. And I think there's going to be a few of these, but here's the one that is what step 3 is. Pick your favorite reading, your favorite like couple pages of a short story, something like that, and track it into your microphone once a week, maybe even once a day. So set aside the eternal battle of sounding like you're reading, and that whole thing. The point of this exercise is to loosen you up. So uh, you get so comfortable with some text that you then allow yourself to start experimenting with it. So one day you're going to read the text completely deadpan, like you're the AI on a galaxy class starship, right? And then one day you're gonna read the text like you're in the WWE. So like you're gonna read it like you're Macho Man Randy Savage. Anybody? No? Okay. Um, and then another day you're gonna read it like this is the greatest news that you've ever heard, like you just won the lottery. Um, and the general idea here is that what you're gonna do is develop and learn about your different possible ranges. You're going to develop and learn about your different possible ranges. Now, look, it might not be the case that you will use any of these ranges. One of my favorite podcast voices in all of the universe, Phoebe Judge from Criminal, doesn't have like she's not like she's not doing all this in her stuff, right? Like she's pretty even, um, like as a person, as a voice, as an everything. Um, uh, but the point is that we want you to be able to choose what ranges you occupy, as opposed to being confined to whatever range you currently have. Does that make sense? Okay. Uh, next one. Use your body. One of the things that I would do uh, as a radio person, because I've been in radio for like 20 years. I was always doing um, uh, like I started off doing like the slow jams on my college radio station. So it was like, back before we realized how tragically wrong we were about R. Kelly. I was like on the show on the radio playing slow jams. Okay. But the thing is that the context of the studio is such that you get in place and you like get your distance from the mic, and then you stay there and you don't really move, and that encourages you to always just be like basically still at the microphone. And however, the problem is that we very often use our bodies to express emotion. And when we move our bodies, our voices also reflect that movement. So using one's body is great. And I think that, who is it from? I'm trying to think. There's one person that I'm thinking of in particular. Uh, is it Elsa Chang from All Things Considered? I one time I went into the All Things Considered studio, at NPR back in the day when it was open, and they were doing the show, and so she was reading the copy, but she was like moving her arms, and like it was kind of incredible because I had not seen that before. I had seen other people track, and people have different styles, of course, but she was like doing this stuff, and and you could hear it in her voice. And then I realized, oh right, whenever I'm hearing her on the radio, she's like moving around in this way, and that's why her voice has this quality to it. So moving your body is a great thing to do. The next thing to do is exaggerate your facial expressions. So if you notice, if I start talking like I don't give a shit what's going on, you see how my whole entire face changes? You can't do that without, you can't make your voice do that without making your face do that. And it's very easy to think, oh, well, no one is seeing me because I'm on the radio and I'm recording stuff, but actually people feel it all the time. So if it's happy, smile when you track. If it's sad, frown, move your body, the whole thing. I've been actually seeing like an acting coach type person, and I'm always in my recording booth whenever we're on the session, and she's always like, "You need to get up out of that damn recording booth because there's no space to move in there, and you're not going to be good if you can't move." And I was like, "Damn, I never thought about that before." But like this is what we need to be at. We need to be thinking about how we can move our bodies, and you can take that body movement thing and add that to your weekly practice of reading, a couple pages of a short story or an essay or whatever. Okay. 5. Or is this 5? Yeah, we're moving pretty quickly. Okay, we'll have a lot of chance to talk after this. Okay. So we're on this journey, and like I say, these aren't steps that are necessarily in order. They could be concurrent, right? But we're on a journey to developing our voice, and usually that's because there's something that we want to talk about or express or explain in our own podcast or in some kind of work that we do. What I'll say though is that instead of immediately jumping into the thing that you care about the most, start with the thing that's next to the thing that you care about the most. And here's what I mean. Here's what I mean. If I care greatly about something, if I'm like really down for something, then I'm going to have the least distance from it. And if I have no distance from the thing that I care about, it's going to be a lot easier for me to not be mindful of the way that it's coming across. So what I like to do is, make cases or argue for things that, I have some feelings about, but they're not like the most important thing to me in my universe. These things, the next two things, are really good for practice, right? Because here's the thing: you need a certain degree of distance, I think, from the thing you're talking about uh, to be able to observe your technique and more easily take notes on how to improve. So this is why I would say, like, always start with the thing next to the thing that you care about the most, and not the thing that you care about the most. This mileage will vary on this one, of course, but I hope that you can see what it is that I'm saying, right? And this is going to possibly make more sense when I get to these last couple things here. All right. 6, work out your perspective. Anybody ever seen a David Lynch movie? Anybody? Blue Velvet? Anyone? Eraserhead?
Yes.
Represent? Okay.
Yes.
Um uh Anyone who gets a chance to talk to David Lynch is like, what the hell was that? And Lynch is like, I'm not telling you what that is. However, Lynch has always said that he knows what his films are about. Does that make sense? Like, he knows what his idea is, and he's pursuing his idea to the ends of the earth, even when it turns out to be Eraserhead, right? So, what does this mean? What's happening here? What am I trying to say? You should be able to state in words your fundamental motivation for being on the mic. You don't necessarily have to tell others, but I think you need to know it for yourself. You need to know it for yourself, because part of having a voice is having a reliable perspective. That is, where people who are listening to you, they know what your angle is, or they know what they're going to get. They know what to expect in a certain kind of way. Now, knowing what to expect does not mean being predictable, but it does mean being reliable, right? Like, I don't always know what Invisibilia's show is going to be, but the episodes are reliably good because of that team's investigation methods, right? And your perspective is only as good as, I would say, three things: your theory, your experience, and your fundamental criticality. And by that, I just mean, like, people who have experienced a lot tend to have a lot wider ways of thinking about things. People that have good engagements with theory tend to know how to evaluate things. People that are critical and cognitively flexible tend to say things that I like to hear, and that whole jam, right? So you have to know this for yourself. If you don't have theory, you might want to go get some theory. If you don't have fundamental perspectives about the world that, like, are part of your ground condition for being in the world, then you might need to get some of those, because even when you don't explain them, they come across on the mic. They will come across in the way that you ask questions, in the way that you explain things to the audience, in the kinds of editorial decisions that you make. They will come across, right? Okay. And then the last thing here that I will state, number 7, is always be persuasive. This is perhaps the the most nebulous of everything that I was saying, but let me see if I can explain it a little bit. Um, Persuasiveness is a kind of fundamental energy that you bring to the things that you make, right? Now, as we've established, your voice should be the strongest on whatever your own show is. But also, you're producing a thing because you feel it will add something valuable to the world. Um, and maybe that's information, maybe that's entertainment, maybe it's a way of thinking. But the point is that you're not out here just sharing your thoughts. You're not just saying, well, I just want to share my thoughts about it. Like, that's not really what's happening. You're making a case for the existence of your thoughts. You're making a case for the existence of your work, of your podcast, and the content within it. So you always have to have that fundamental forward movement, right? You always have to have that fundamental forward movement. And that, the name I give to that is persuasiveness. Like, you're always trying to, or I think you should always be trying to establish something. And now, whether that's the establishment of a particular line of argument, or whether that's, you're trying to establish that this show is valuable and that people need to hear it, or that this is entertaining, that you're always at all times making a case for yourself, right? And I should also say that, like, one of the things that we've learned about humanity is that it's possible to be persuasive without having anything. You don't have to have ethics. You don't have to have a perspective. You don't have to have any integrity. Like, persuasiveness can be a quality all by itself. And that's why we have, like, cult leaders and Tucker Carlson and, like, all manner of things, right? So I think that it's important to take this thinking about persuasiveness and attach it to the perspectives that you care about, right? And that way you maintain, like, a fundamental, like, will to truth, in other words. Well, that all got strange toward the end there. I would love to hear any questions that you may have about the possible nonsense that I have just shared with you.
Hey, Chioke. That was amazing. Just wondering, what else do you teach? Because I would love to take one of your courses.
Oh my goodness. I teach the core classes of Africana studies. This semester I'm teaching African diasporas. And I also teach a course in podcasting called Podcasting While Black. But my free and open educational programming is at the VPM ICA Community Media Center. We do lots of stuff. We have, as it happens, a live show featuring Phoebe Judge of Criminal in April. So, we do stuff. Using persuasiveness with responsibility. Yes. Yeah. Persuasiveness is a naked quality, that it's a quality that can show up in absence of anything else. And so it's always important to anchor persuasiveness in integrity.
I had a question that I think I put in the chat like while you were on a roll. So just curious if you have any tips on, you talked about like finding the right microphone for your voice. Are there any sort of general knowledge of like what types of microphones work best for what types of voice? When do you want a dynamic versus a condenser mic? What's good for a higher or lower register, et cetera?
My general, on the most basic level, I think that everyone should start with a dynamic microphone. And I say this because most of the time, we don't have sonic environments that can sustain condenser microphones. So for instance, I'm speaking right now on a condenser, but it's because like my dynamics are in my recording studio, right? Like they tend to pick up too much, and you tend to have to do a lot of stuff to them to make the signal how you want it, So if you're not in a soundproof box, probably a dynamic mic is the starting point. Generally speaking, I advocate getting a regular dynamic mic that goes into a regular sound card that goes into your computer. However, because dynamic mics have low output, you have to use what's called a cloud lifter, which raises the output signal of the dynamic mic. But once you do this, you get probably the most reliable sound by that means than any other means. I personally use two mics, the Electro Voice RE20, which is like the oldest of the old timey like radio mics, but then there's also the Shure SM7, and it is my understanding that there are now like USB dynamic microphones. Some maybe even are made by Shure, but I don't have any experience with them, so I can't say for certain. But that's the basic. My basic thing is have a dynamic that goes into a sound card that goes into your computer. This is my basic starting advice. Do I ever listen to my own voice and feel embarrassed to hear myself? Yes. I don't think anyone likes the sound of their own voice. I don't think you have to like the sound of your own voice. All that you have to do is make it such that that other people are okay with your voice. So, okay, when I first began on like doing NPR type stuff, I got like all these complaints because I don't know if you know, but the first problem with the universe is that dudes have real strong opinions about the voices of women, and they are very happy to send emails on that score. But I also got some of those complaints, and it was a complaint about quote unquote vocal fry. Now, I have an assortment of opinions about this whole thing, but the main thing that I just want to say is that like people talk how they talk, and it's a bunch of trash. But it is also the case that there are elements of performativity. So we have to, I had to weigh the, I had to weigh like the general opinionated hate with questions about the way that my performativity worked. And probably there are still people who do not like my voice. I once got an email like to my university account that was just like, I hate your voice. It's the worst. Like, it was just like a paragraph of like why this person hated my voice. But it happens very, very rarely. And I don't think that it matters. I have now departed very far down a tangent. Someone please save me.
I have a quick question, if
Yeah.
I can jump in. You might have said this because I missed number 3 because my computer died, but what about, could you talk about, like, in terms of finding your voice, like, could you talk about the like text that you're working with a little bit? So like, I mean, is it just a matter of, you know, I don't know, like looking at this text over and over and over again and kind of like establishing, you know, is it recording yourself and listening back? Like, what do you practice in terms of like preparing the content itself?
So the key to improvement is always repetition, right? So then all that I'm saying is that you find a couple pages of a thing that you really like. And so for me, it was like this really old short story from like the 1920s about like a news wire. It was called The Night Wire. It's a great short story. But the point is that I would read like the first like couple pages like often. And what happens is that after a while, you can hear yourself reading, and you can hear the, like, when you make a change, you can hear that change, right? So but you need the repetition in order to do that. So this is the point. Yes, of course. Another thing that you can do is you'll track it, and then you'll play it back. And as you play it back, you do a live critique. So literally, while it's playing, you're immediately repeating it, but you're saying the stuff differently than what is in the recording. This is also like really, really helpful. You see what I'm saying? Because I don't know what it is about the universe, but even if I recorded something just now, when I go and put it on the computer and then I'm like cutting it up and getting it ready, I'm like, I could have said that shit better. Like every single, like it never fails, right? So what you need to do is increase the amount of times that you have the occasion to do that. And the only way to do that is by doing the readings, right? And of course, like I say, use your body, walk around the house, like read it at different places, sit back, stand up, and get on your mic and track it. Because obviously the other thing is that the tracking is also different. If you learn to speak louder, you're going to have to learn to turn down your settings. And if you're going to yell, then you got to learn to turn away, because that's part of the mic technique. But I'm saying all of these things are the things that you want to do. It's a very simple but like shockingly effective method for how to help get yourself better about being on a microphone.
Cool. Thanks so much.
Oh yeah. Do you keep a fictional or real someone in your mind when you speak on the mic? Yeah, I sometimes do. Like I try to think about, okay, in my mind, the microphone is a human ear attached to someone, right? So like that's one way that I think about it. I try and think about the microphone as being like a human ear, like I'm never alone in the thing. And sometimes you need this more than other times, but it's definitely a technique that I use. And sometimes, depending on what it is I'm tracking, like sometimes I'll track like a short story for a podcast. I will ask a friend of mine to get on Zoom, and I'll track the story with them on Zoom. They might be like knitting or like they're not even like paying attention to me really, but like just the fact that someone is there is very helpful. But then of course, when you're editing, you're playing that back, and then you're thinking through the performativity that you summoned when that person was there. And over time, you won't really need that person anymore. Right? Yeah. Yeah. I hope that makes sense. What else? Marcel, you over here fixing furniture? Are you are we in like a Swedish furniture assembly situation? This is IKEA joint?
I knew what you meant when you said IKEA. I just wanted to make sure we wasn't breaking any copyright laws by you saying IKEA. Yeah. No, I was listening to everything that was going on, and then I got like my oldest kid is gone with his cousins, but then I decided to finally check his room and realized that a bed of his, the trundle bed, is broken. Like I'm now replacing wheels because I'm figuring buying $60 wheels is better than paying over $500 for a new bed.
Honestly, I don't know why they should have explained that like kids is equal to wear and tear. That's all they should say. They should be like, kids is wear and tear on your body, wear and tear on your stuff. Anyway, yeah.
But no, I had a question because I've been getting organized for a podcast. I've been buying stuff here and there. So I missed the part about the microphones because I had bought like I'm waiting for a sound card too because I'm trying to figure out which one to buy. Like, is it better to get a sound card that has like a higher capacity of like microphones / headphones as well? So because I believe that a few times the concept of what I'm doing a podcast, I think a few episodes I probably will have 4 people on, like my best friends, off and on. Like might be talk about different things, whether it's sports, being a father, being married, whatever. And I was just wondering, like, what's a good cheap sound card to use where as though it can have a decent mic capacity of like up to four mics at least, and headphones. Like, does it matter if it's like corded headphones, Bluetooth headphones, or so forth?
I mean, I'm gonna make it real simple and just say that if you're messing with if you're trying to get 4 inputs, then you might want to look at the Focusrite Claret. There's 2 versions. There's the Scarlet and the Claret. The Scarlet has crappy preamps. The Claret has quality preamps. The Claret costs more, but it saves you from having to get a damn preamp, right? So that's a way to think about it. The next thing is, don't ever in your life use Bluetooth headphones for anything. You need to use studio monitors, like proper studio monitors. The Sony makes some of those, and that's how you need to roll. Bluetooth is just going to fail you, and when it doesn't fail you, it's lying to you about how the thing sounds. And yeah, I'll leave it there. I noticed that in the chat, there's a thing about the what is it? The Orlando. I can't find it where it was. Orlando Public Library. Yeah. So that's super cool. Also, the media center that I run can help you with equipment stuff, but that's the basic. My basic starting point. Yeah.
What is this? You said the company is Focusrite.
Focusrite. Yeah. Okay. I'm literally talking to you on a Focusrite.
Yeah. I just found this. I was wondering to make sure.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. What moved you to get acting coaching? Is it something you found helpful? Yeah. I mean, so I do like more narration stuff now. Like I narrate short stories. I produce like an audio book, and I've always been like, man, how can I like get better at this? And so like the acting coach put it into a system that made it make sense for me. And I would say that it's been like more helpful than I could ever have imagined. So, and furthermore, it's like where did I find it? Like Thumbtack or whatever. Like you just like go online and then you just meet them on Zoom for some sessions every now and then. It helped me out like a lot. And I would say that it definitely changed a lot of the performativity of some of my work. So like if it's a thing that you have access to, if you can get in touch with like a little acting coach or whatever, it's not a bad idea. It's certainly not a bad idea. Yeah.
Thanks so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone?
Just curious as to what software you're using for the black and white background you're on. Sorry.
I think that Zoom, you can just like make Zoom go black and white, but I have like a legitimate camera like plugged in into like a video switcher next to an Octabox. It's like a whole thing. I do this a lot. Like I'm a professor, and I also like do a censor, so I'm here a lot, and so I had to like switch it up a bit to make it quality. And actually, if you notice, it's part of the idea of like having a voice is that like when people log on and they expect to see like a regular old like Zoom window, and they see like whatever this is, they're like, whoa, what's going on? You see what I'm saying? And so that in itself is part of my fundamental ongoing project of persuasiveness.
I chatted in the chat about the speed at which you talk, and I tend to talk, like I'm saying in the chat, like I tend to talk very fast, and I also listen to podcasts at more than 1x speed, which is probably part of the problem. But then when I recorded a script, I was told that it very much shows, but I feel like when I talk slower, it changes maybe the inflection or whatever. So I would just love to get some advice about that.
What's your name? Angela?
Yeah.
Angela, human beings were not meant to listen to podcasts on 2x speed. We people worked very well. Some podcasters out there worked very hard to engage you at one at 1-to-1. Come on, Angela, we can't live like this. But yeah, so I'll say that I also had to learn about pacing, and when it was often at the beginning of me doing tracking type stuff, they would tell me, hey, you gotta slow down, right? So, and I'll say that the slowing down, if you are used to speaking very quickly, is a good idea. If you can't help but speak quickly in clusters and give like a couple beats for people to like catch up mentally to what it is that you're saying. But the best way to do things is probably to add some variation in the way that you speak. So you say some things, you say kind of slowly, and then you kind of ramp it up really quick to have like a little kind of emotional flow to what it is that you're saying. But definitely you gotta slow down. You can't live a 2x life in a 1-to-1 world. Also, it's very helpful to I learned, which no one else would have a cause to know this, but I learned that learning to make copy fit within a time period will make you think about what your pace is. So if you have like a lines or steal some copy from like a, some kind of podcast intro, and then be like, okay, I'm going to track this, but it has to be at 30 seconds. It can't be shorter and it can't be longer. And then you're going to like try and speak evenly to get to the 30-second mark. You'll learn a lot of things about pacing by doing a practice like that. As you can tell, I'm like very, very into practicing. There's no other way. There's no way to do things. You're only good at what you train at, and increasing your opportunities to train is the best thing you can do.
I have sort of a follow-up question to that, particularly with your work reading the underwriting for NPR, because I do that at a NPR affiliate station, and I find.
What? Are you a sponsored voice?
Yeah, at WHOI in Philadelphia.
Sponsored Voices Unite.
Yeah.
Sabrina. Oh my goodness.
I feel like doing that work has just completely ruined my like natural podcast hosting voice, because first of all, I've had to create my NPR voice, and second, I get copy that is way longer than that, like does not logically fit in 15 seconds for a 15-second spot. So I guess my question is, how do you deal with that and still sound, how do you fit something that is too long or too short and still sounds natural. I feel like I had a second part to that question, but I can't remember it, so let's go with that.
Yeah, so we at NPR headquarters, I know that you at the NPR station, that they just give you any old thing. I know that that's a fact. We at NPR headquarters have very strict rules, and if they give us stuff that's too long, we'll push back, but we still will have like stuff that's too long. So a lot of it is about just like learning to take the space where you can, to truncate distances between sentences when you can, and that kind of thing. So it's like a little bit of that. If it gets crazy, we'll do actual like time compression and with pitch correction. Everyone who knows the sound of your voice can tell, but people that don't know the sound of your voice, really, they can't actually tell, you know. But the bigger problem that you're talking about is how being like an NPR underwriting voice will mess up your voice for other stuff. And that is definitely the case for me. I remember I did a thing where I narrated an episode of Love and Radio, and I was on with Nick Vanderkook, and I'd be like, I'm reading the script now. And then he'd be like, stop, NPR voice. And I was like, what? Was I doing it again? You know, so a thing that's very helpful is to have another person in the thing saying no, like whenever you do it, so that you can learn to switch. I still have trouble with the switch, but it definitely can be done. Yeah. But I think that the way to do it is to go like crazy in the other direction and do like very different stuff. Yeah.
Cool, thanks.
How to navigate being persuasive, sharing committed to one's values and trying to make content that's universal or unbiased. Well, I don't have any pretenses of making unbiased content. I think we know by now that bias is a fundamental condition of human expression, right? And also, so my PhD is in philosophy, and I have some serious like thoughts about what universality is, and you know, the difference between universals and particulars, right? And I think that universality in the case of like storytelling is to be inferred, right? Like really, you should tell the specific kind of story that you're trying to tell. You can save your anecdotes or your reflections for later, but really when you tell like a deeply specific story, people feel the universal ideals, right? Like, you know, The Color Purple is a movie about a very specific story, but I never met nobody that didn't feel, you know, its message, you know, at a universal level. I probably would not want to know a person that did not feel the message of The Color Purple on a universal level. But that's what I'm trying to get to. Do I warm up before I record? I do warm up. I have a playlist of like 5 songs, like half sing songs and half rap songs that I sing along to before I get into the studio. Warming up your voice is no joke. I used to not even notice that stuff, but now if I don't warm up before I get on the microphone, I sound like garbage. The people at NPR that I submit files to will tell me that I sound like garbage. I won't be able to get through the session because like my voice will crack, and things that you never noticed before, you will notice if you track every single day, which is why I'm encouraging you to track as often as possible. Any other thoughts? Anything else that
I'll just see that like if you track every day and listen to it, it goes into your subconscious. It's like falling asleep with something, and you're able to like really hear the nuances in your voice, where you need to improve, where you need to improve pacing. Like even putting it on a headset on your phone and jogging, like you're gonna improve in leaps and bounds just from you'll be like, oh wait, I said that way. Let me say it this way. It's really a good tip. Thank you.
It is major. It's major. So I've recorded a lot of professor people philosophers, that kind of thing. And a lot of them didn't even know that they had vocal tics at all until they heard their voice, their interview on playback. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of people didn't know that they said, right? Like professors like to say this, W.B. Du Bois started the thing in 1895, right? And people don't even know that they're saying stuff like that until they hear themselves on playback. So that's a major thing. And so I totally agree with you. There's no other way to do it than to do it a lot. Listen back to it. You'll get sick of your own voice, but you were never meant to like your own voice. And you will then become obsessed with fixing things that other people can't hear, but it's okay because other people can feel it. Me and my producer at NPR will go back and forth about a word. And then we always joke with each other like, no one in the universe is going to write in being like, oh, Chioke pronounced the word the wrong. But we were like, it doesn't sound right. We have to fix it. Like it's all on us. But that level of quality obsession is good because it contributes to you having a good voice. Oh man, are we done? Is this party over?
Yeah, we are. We're 12 minutes over, so I think.
Oh, we're like way over. We're having fun.
We're having
a
good
moderator.
I was in the zone, but yeah, I feel like everybody's questions are answered. Is there anywhere that people can go to follow along with your work besides hearing you on the radio every day?
Okay, so I just put a chat in a direct message to you because I'm so good at Zoom. I just put a chat in the box here that is the link to the media center that I run. Cool. If you join the mailing list for the media center, you'll get an email every now and then, but you'll also get access to our previous recordings. And that's a good way to roll if you are interested in this kind of thing. And I should say that it's very similar. We do things that are very similar to what's happening at WAVS, right? We've brought people from Radiotopia and from NPR. Just last week, we had Ramteen Arablouei do a listening session. So just earlier in the previous session, we did like a listening thing to other people's pitches. But imagine doing that with like an NPR producer that works full time making a podcast for NPR, whose show gets like 2 million downloads a month. So like we're on that. That's what we do. We bring people and then we just present free programming to the public. So you're all invited.
Yeah, everybody should go sign up for that. I've seen some of the recordings and they're top notch, just like this.
It's pretty cool. I'm so excited to be able to do it. I can't wait till we open this studio because I think that's going to be fresh. But
yeah, I want to ask, did you design that? Did you help create?
Oh no, we had like interior designers, architects, artists. Like it's a whole shindig. I was like, I want to have it, but I wanted to like be cool. And they were like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then they came back with, yeah. So that's how it all went down.
Right on. Well, I hope that we can all come visit there in person someday soon.
Certainly.